Let's have a quick look to see what we're building here. This is a Quotations app, and we're going to have a tabbed component, tabbed container this time we're going to use. And we're going to have sections for reading, inserting, deleting, updating, and searching within this. So in the second section, in the insertion of data, this is where I mention the use of a tabbed pane component. And that's what I'm just going to demonstrate to you just now, how to use a tabbed pane component. This will contain 4 tabs. Each of the tabs will have a J panel. Each of the tabs will have a panel held within it that performs one of those database functions for us. So a new project, Java with Ant, click Java application, hit next button. Now this only happens on our Citrix version of NetBeans. I'm going to accept these things. On your machines, it won't take you through this. Finish. Okay, now I'm going to browse and find my directory where I'm going to work in. So I'm on Citrix, so I've got my own drive that I can save my projects in. You will also have your own drive if you're working in Citrix. So inside here, I've got a folder called My NetBeans Projects. So I will use this as the top level folder for saving my project. I need to, for a GUI application, remember you untick create main class, give the application a name. I will call this quotation, quotation. Call it Quotation App. Everything is okay, hit finish. Creates my project. Expand source packages. Default, right click now on default package, select new JFrame form. And again, I will call this quotation. Just call it quotation this time. Package name, of course, has to be unique. I'm just using my name backwards. You can do the same if you want. Hit finish. So it gives me a form, and the very first thing we do, remember when your GUI application has started up, is just to test it, make sure that it does display, and I've gone through the process of creating a GUI app properly. So hit the run button. It comes up with this message. That's good. Tells me that there's the main class. I press OK. Starts up my GUI. GUI gets displayed in the top left-hand corner. That annoys me. So I want it to always display in the center of the screen. And this is where you would go to the JFrame. So in the navigator, click on JFrame. If you don't see navigator and you don't see this kind of view, you can always reset your windows by going to Window, then reset Windows, and that gives you the view that you're seeing on this on my screen, with the palette and properties down the side, the output at the bottom of the screen. So JFrame, click on JFrame. I want the frame to be centered. Click on JFrame, select the code tab in the properties window. So we have properties, we've got the events, and we've got the code window. So I go to code window and I put a tick into the generate center option here, option box. So that now should center my app in the middle of the screen for me. Okay. I can also add on the JFrame, go to properties, and change the title. If I remember, the property that allows me to change the title. Top. So this is not the EPOS, this is quotations. QUO. And again, so quotations appears up at the top in the title bar for my app. Next, I'm going to put a title on the actual form itself. So for that, I'll use a label. I'll put a label up at the top here. Right click, edit text. Call it quotations. Let's give it a bit of a different size. So I'm changing the font. Make the font a bit bigger. Put it in bold. Choose something a wee bit different. I'll go for this one here. I'll change the alignment of that to be centered. And let's also change the foreground color. So that will change the color of the text. Again, you can change other things within here as well. The background, let's give it a light background, light yellow background would be nice. Oh, I don't know if that's come through. Something a bit darker, greenier. Don't know where that background comes in, but it's not displaying on my screen. But yeah, so you can modify the label if you wanted to show that. So when the program runs, at least it gives you something a bit more nice. You could also introduce other images if you wanted at the side, or design using other components, this screen. But that's the basics of what we need. Now I'm going to introduce the tabbed pane. So we start off with grabbing one of these tabbed pane containers. So these are the swing containers. Containers, remember, will hold the controls, and they allow you to combine them all into the one chunk or one unit, allowing you to move things around very easily on the screen. So one tabbed pane comes on. Increase its size slightly. That's my main working area. Increase this as well a wee bit. So that's my working area. And at the bottom, I'll have a button to close the application. Right click, edit text. Call this close. So that will close the application for me. I will also rename the button to be BTN close. The tabbed pane, I will rename its variable name as tab. Tab for tab control and main. So it's just the one I'm going to use within here. So I'll call this tab main. And label I'll also change. So get into the habit, folks, of changing your variable names, because once you have so many labels and so many buttons, then when you go into the source code, you will find it very difficult to identify which control you are working with. So LBL quotation. So I've got quotation, I've got a tabbed pane, and I've got a button to close. Now onto the tabbed pane, I now want the different tabs. And the way to bring in different tabs is to drag a panel now. So I take a panel and I move my mouse onto the tabbed pane. Now notice the tabbed pane shows a border around it, a dashed border around it. I press the left mouse click, and that brings in my first tab. I can then change the name of this tab by just right clicking and selecting edit text. So the first operation in quotations is read. So I'll call that read. So right click, change the text to read. So I'm typing the name, then pressing the enter, that affects it. And then bring in another panel. Again, you can't just drop the panel anywhere. You have to move the arrow to the first tab, to wherever your tabs are. And when you see this dashed line appearing around the tabbed pane, that's when you can press click. Right, you can press your mouse click, and that will drop the next tab. So read, and the other operation is insert, delete, and update. So I need another 3. I'll bring in another 4 tabs: insert, delete, update, and search. So this one is read, insert, update, and delete. One more for search. So read, insert, update, delete, and search. So on the read data, then I would have a combo box. Now, before I go on to bring my other components, I'm going to name these ones as well. So JPanel 1, I will call this PNL read. Panel 2 is insert. So PNL insert. Then PNL update. So in the same manner, you would then, when you build the EPOS application, you'll be doing something similar. You'll have different sections, different tabs to do different operations. The first tab might just be ordering. So this is where you would display the buttons, allowing the user agent to simply select the different products. You'll have maybe add users, add products, admin reset. There's a reset section, of course, in the EPOS. You'd have a reset section, and you'd also have a tab for the reports that are going to be displayed. The last one is search, so PNL search. So take this time, folks, to name your components before you start to add code. And this way you won't get into any issues when you have unnamed components and they're just indexed with 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very difficult to work in source if you haven't named them properly. So this gives me my basic tabs. Let's have a quick run of this just to see how it looks. So I've got insert, update, delete, and so on. Nothing is coded. I've got no code in there just now. So for read, then what I need is a combo box. I'll put a label at the start. And the text on this label, I will call quotes. I'll remove the default items from within here by pressing so click on combo, then go to the model property of the combo and remove the default ones. That's the default entries inside quotes. So the users, this is going to be populated in the window opened event. You might have other combos in the other tabs. Of course, so you need to name those differently. In update, for example, you're going to have to allow the user to go and select one of the quotations that they're going to then update. So you'll probably have a combo in there as well. So the convention I'm going to use, the naming convention I'll use for naming my combos is I'll use them in conjunction with the tab name. So this combo here, I will change its variable name to read CBO and read. followed by quotes. So the read part tells me that it belongs in the read pane. I should also change this as well, really, shouldn't I? So let me change this to read LBL, read quotes. So in code, if I come across an LBL, a label, if I want to update a label, it also has an indication of which tab it belongs to. So the combo box, and then I need a text area. So put a text area in. Just increase the size of this text area, or the tabbed pane, I think. And I also need the author. So the author will come into either a text area can be used or a label can be used. So I'll bring in a text. But no, I'll just bring in a label. Probably the best one to use. Maybe position it down here. So this will be used for the author. The author can be displayed next to the selected combo. So when the user interacts with quotes, they will pick one of the quotations. You'll go to the database, you'll find the quote, select the quote based on the ID of the quote, and then bring back the author, update the author in this label, and also bring in the full quotation into this label here. At this stage, I'm not going to introduce the image of the author, so you could add that in towards the end. You need to maybe rearrange the screen to add the author into the end. So this is read. I'll rename these components as well. I don't think I renamed this one. So this will be called LBL. It's on the read tab, so read, and then author. Text area, I'll change that to read text area, and then as part of the read, so I'll bring in a read and then quotation. Okay, so I have my read section all made up. Now, if you're doing inserts and updates, it may also be necessary to bring in a refresh button. Remember, the combo box is going to be populated on the window opened event. So when the window opens and you go away and you start to delete and update or insert new quotes into the application, you do need something that allows you to refresh. In other words, go back to the database and update these elements. It's not, they won't automatically be updated as you're doing inserts updates. Of course, you're populating the combo on startup of the program. So any changes that are made after that are not necessarily reflected on these components. You need to clear them out, go back to the database and fill them up again with the fresh information or fresh data that's in there. So you need a refresh button in here as well. So I'll call this btn refresh. Let's run the program. So read, I will pick a quote from here. This is you'll trap the action performed, and that will then open a method which does the database connection, brings back the actual quote, the author, and update these two components on the screen. Insert will be probably a text area, a few text areas. So a text area for the quotation itself, and also a text field for the author. If you've used auto number as described in my notes in my city for inserting areas, the read data. So this describes the actual database that you're going to use. So you use these three fields. Auto number will automatically add a number into the database. So you don't need to have an insert for the auto number. So insert will just really just have a label for the author. So we'll call this LBL. We're on the insert tab now, so I'll use insert as a word before the actual label name. So LBL insert, this is author. And just change the text. Author name. This will change, of course. I'm just putting this as a placeholder in here just now. So I'll put a couple of stars on it. In fact, it could stay empty, couldn't it? It could stay empty. Oh, not a good idea. Let's change the size. So this is take me back. Let me change it. I'm going to add in author here. So that's our label. Next to this will be a text field. So don't just drop on text fields without telling the user what the text fields are for. This is why I've got this label at the start. So I'll change the text in here just to be empty. Change its name to text field. So TXT, tell me it's a text field. It's on the insert tab, so I'll use insert, and it's the author. Then another label for the actual quotation. This would be quotation, and then I want a text field, another text field. Sorry, not a text field. Quotation is going to be multi-lined, so I will use a text area for the quotation. Again, take care on your user interface. Remember to make your application look nice. Don't use huge buttons. Don't use very large text boxes and text areas. Just try to make everything nicely, neat and uniform throughout your front end. So author gets tapped in here, quotation gets tapped in here, and then we need a button to do the actual adding. So another button. We'll call this insert. Just call it insert quote. Rename it as BTN. It's on my insert tab, so I'll use insert. BTN insert quote. And the code that this method's action performed opens up is where you'll have the database code to do the insertion into the data. So far we know how to do reads because you'll have done those in countries and capitals. To do an insert, we want to pull the text that the user types into author, pull the text from the quotation from the text area. Both of these will use get text. So read those, save them in a string, and then the code behind insert quote. Again, I've given you guidelines here in the insert section. So this time we're going to use the execute update method of the statement object. So you still need all your other database code parts, connection, then the statement, then the result set. In fact, no, you don't need a result set in this one because there's nothing coming back. You're simply inserting. So you'll just use the statement object to do the insert. It doesn't return any record sets. You don't need to have record sets or a while loop within here. You'll then need to programmatically build up the actual SQL string. And this will be made up of insert into your quotes table, followed by the fields. So the author field, the name that you've given, these, again, those will match the field names in your database, followed by the actual quotation that you've read again from the text area. The SQL for this, so once the insert has happened, the SQL will insert into the database, but there won't be any feedback given to the user. So it's always nice to give the user a little bit of feedback to say that your quote has been inserted. And that's where this comes in. The J option pane is a swing component, which lets you fire up a dialog, a box that appears on top of your application. You can give the user a message saying that your quote has been inserted. So this is just that line of code that you'll use after you've done the insertion. So the execute update is used when you're doing inserts and updates in conjunction with the statement object. For reading the statement objects, you simply use the, if you recall, the RS string, so use just the select statements that you've used in the countries and capitals. So insert, different method. To delete and update, we also need the ID. So you can't delete a quote or a record in the database without knowing the auto number, that number at the start, that unique index number. So delete and update are both going to require the user to find the quotation that they want to delete or find the quotation that they want to update before they can actually do the updating and deleting. So I'm going to leave these ones for you. Both of these will most likely have a combo box within them, similar to the one that we used here. So these will also need to be updated whenever new inserts and things take place. Now, the format of the quote as described in here is, I hope I'm making it clear, folks, that you need to have the identifier, the ID. You can't just use first element index in the combo as the ID, because if you decide to delete a quote, then the auto number doesn't delete that number. Auto number in Access won't automatically delete that identifier, that primary key. The primary key of the record will not be changed. It just disappears. So that's why when you're refreshing combos, we introduce the identifier followed by a colon and then a small part of the, so just the first 10 characters of the quote in the actual application. And then when the user interacts with it, you need to then extract that number out. So there you will use index off to find the position of the colon and also substring up to that position to read out the number, then convert that number into an integer. And once you have that number as an integer, you can then use select star where ID equals followed by the number that you want to retrieve of the record from the database. Now, these techniques you will use when you're building your EPOS application as well, of course. So this is why I gave you these to practice before we move on to the EPOS application. So once you've understood how to do the reading, inserting, and deleting and so on, then you can start to incorporate these when you're doing the products part. So remember, you've got to add products to the products table. So adding products, deleting, reading, inserting. This will all be in the admin tabs of the EPOS application. So you'll have a section to do this, to do something similar for products and also users. And only managers will be allowed to do this. So the managers Again, this is where the security comes in. That's why I've given you this show and hide tabs section. Depending on the user that logs in, certain tabs will be hidden from them, from their view. Let's quickly run this. I still haven't put any code in. All I've done is just built my user interface. So read, insert, fix that, insert to this button slightly up. I've not changed the name of this label, so I'll rename this as well. So this is on the insert tab and it's quotation. So this is going to be LBL insert quotation. The scroll panes don't need to change. You don't need to rename those. These scroll panes are part of the text area. The text area contains more text than can be displayed within them. Then a scroll pane appears. You notice it appears here because the size of this is quite small, so I'll increase the size of that one as well. It's not going to work. So you can see it's quite fiddly working with the GUI builder inside NetBeans. I said this is why most commercial companies that are creating Windows or desktop-based Java applications, they will be programmatically building these. We are allowing the GUI builder to generate our code. You go into source and you look at this generated code. You'll see this is what NetBeans is giving us. This could all be handwritten, of course, but we're using the designer to do it for us. Right, just design. Do a quick run again, and then I'll pack this project up and pass it on to you through MyCity. And you can use this as the basis for your Quotations app. So you've still got to do the update, delete, and the search part. I'll leave you to do that on your own. Remember, as you're adding controls, remember to rename them. Rename their text on the screen and also the variable name that you've got there. I don't think I've missed any, just do a double check on it. So you can see the navigator here. We've got the JFrame. To trap the window opened event of the JFrame, right click, go to events. This will show you the events that can be interacted with, and then window, followed by window opened on the JFrame. I press JFrame, press the enter key a few times. So this is the block of code that would run to initially populate the combo box then. That's on the read tab, sorry, on the JFrame window opened. When the user interacts with a combo box and you want to read the selected item that the user has chosen, then it's the action performed. To get that, you can, by default, you can double click the control, or if you want, you can choose, you can right click on it, go to events, action, then action performed. As soon as you tap the mouse button on this, that generates the method stub for you to add your code for this. Of course, every component also has other events. You see these other events. So you could, for example, in the insert, put some text in here that says, please type the author name. So when the program runs, it asks the user to type the author name. And then when the user clicks inside it, we can trap the mouse clicked inside to clear that text out. So you can do things that you've seen in other programs where you click and it deletes automatically. or when you hover above it, do certain things when the mouse leaves, mouse press, and so on. So these are all events that can be tracked to give you some section where code can execute. And this, of course, is the name given to this event-driven model that we're working with. Code runs on an event. Code runs based on events that the user interacts with the application. So that's all okay. I will close project. And minimize my NetBeans. I'll find where my project file is. That's inside my directory. Now you've still got to add your drivers in. I'll leave you to do that. Add the drivers in, build your database, and then start to code the Quotations app to help you to understand how the CRUD operations are created inside Java. So inside here, I call that project Quotations App. So this is the folder I want. I'm going to just compress it. And then pass this on to you in my city. Sorry, I need to do this, turn editing on. And then I'll put this into read data, quotation app, read data. If you go down to the bottom here, just here, compressed NetBeans project. I'll drop this in here for you. It is compressed, so you need to download it, save it to your area, and then work within there. I'll also change the settings on this one, just to let you know what it is. Okay, so that's the project now available for you folks. Now you can start to add your own code for the operations of CRUD, the CRUD operations for the database.